All right, well, unless you have actually been through a total solar eclipse, it's hard to describe and illustrate what you're going to see and what you're going to expect. And I really want folks to continue to think about heading south into the area of totality. It really is a once-in-a-lifetime event that we have totality passing basically in our own backyard. For most of us, with a 30 to 45 minute drive, we'll be able to see something that we will never forget. So what I've done is put together a timeline of how things are going to look and how things are going to change as the eclipse progresses during the day on Monday. And I'm taking Georgetown as an example because it's the closest and easiest spot for most of us to get to experience totality. So the eclipse in Georgetown starts at 1:17 on Monday. That's when the moon takes its first little bite out of the sun. You can see here what it will look like through the eclipse glasses, just like a little notch taken out of the sun. It will go completely unnoticed. There will be no change to the sky and no darkening. Even as we work our way towards 2 o'clock, and by that point, 50% of the sun will be covered by the moon. Even then, just a minimal amount of darkening is taking place. For most of us, it goes unnoticed, but you'll notice shadows start to become really dark and really sharp. That's the first real sign that things are beginning to change. Now, things start to pick up pretty dramatically once you get to about an 80% eclipse. And for Georgetown, that comes right about 2:30 or so. That's when you first start to see the really noticeable darkening. The shadows also continue to get darker and to get sharper, and the sky begins to take on a really, really deep blue color, especially as you look up towards the sun. That's where the sky starts to get really dark. The landscape around you, though, starts to lose some of the typical colors that you see, and things start to take on a really sort of a dull and grayish hue. That starts to happen at around 2:30 and 80% during the day on Monday. Now, by the time we get towards 2:40 or 2:41, this is when things start to happen really, really fast. The onset of a total eclipse is a very quick process. Starting at around 2:41, you're going to notice it getting darker literally by the minute. It's not going to be like sunset where it's a gradual process. You will notice literally as seconds go by, it is getting darker. You're also going to notice the significant temperature drop. You'll really start to notice it getting much cooler because you're losing the amount of sun to warm your body. It's all getting blocked, so it starts to feel a lot cooler. And then, once we get within about a minute of totality, that's when things start to change really, really fast. And I've mentioned a few of the really cool things that happen just before totality that you'll only be able to see in totality. The diamond ring effect. That's about 30 seconds to maybe 45 seconds or a minute before totality. That diamond ring effect is the last percentage of sun that is peeking out behind the moon. Then once you get about 10 to 15 seconds before totality, you get what's called Bailey's beads. That is the even smaller fraction of sunlight, which at this point is only shining through the mountain valleys and the craters on the moon. So you get almost a sparkling, twinkling effect around the moon, and that's that last little bit of sunlight beginning to shine through. And then you get something called shadow bands. Maybe, not all eclipses have shadow bands, but these are really cool. Just before and just after totality, you may see really fast but faint moving shadows on anything that's kind of big and white. So think about the side of a white building or the hood of a car, or if even you want to hang a sheet up. A lot of people do that for an eclipse. You may see these shadow bands, and basically that's the last little bit of light sort of getting bounced around by turbulence in the atmosphere, and it creates these really subtle but strange and fast moving shadows on the landscape. And then of course you get to what is the magical part, and that is totality. In Georgetown, if you are planning there, totality lasts for 1 minute and 45 seconds. And that's when you see the absolutely unreal sight of the sun. Where the sun was in the sky is now a black hole, the blackest black you can ever imagine. That's how dark that hole in the sky is. Of course, it's not actually a hole. That's the moon that's blocking the sun. It's dark as it is on a clear moonlit night. That's how dark it's going to be at 2:47 in the afternoon. The stars will be out, the planets will be visible. You'll be able to see Venus and Mercury you'll get that significant temperature drop, sometimes as much as 20 to 25 degrees in that area of totality. And you also have the surreal experience of a sunset in all directions. So while it's dark all around, the sky is dark above you, on every horizon, you'll see the sunset. And that is what you experience in totality. And that's why we really, really want you to think about heading south to places like Georgetown or Pawleys Island or Kingstree, or even further south than that, down around McClellanville. That's where totality is going to last almost 2.5 minutes. Now, if you can, and you want to stay in the Grand Strand, it's going to be an interesting sight, but it's not going to be nearly as dramatic as what's going to happen in the area of totality. Here as well, the eclipse starts at 1:18, and again, no change to the sky through that. By 2 o'clock, we're at 50% eclipse, and still no significant darkening, although you'll start to notice the shadows changing a bit. And during the maximum eclipse, that's when it will be the darkest in Myrtle Beach. And yes, there will be a noticeable darkening between about 2:40 and 2:55 in the afternoon on Monday. The maximum eclipse is at 2:47. That's when 99.4% of the sun will be blocked out. That's going to give you a darkness similar to mid-evening, right about the time the sun sets. And if it's clear without a lot of the typical summer haze, you may still see Venus visible, and you may notice a slight and subtle temperature drop. But again, nothing as dramatic as what you're going to see in that area of totality just 2 hours south. So if you're still thinking about making your plans to head south and thinking about where to go, again, Kingstree, Andrews, down to Pawleys Island, Georgetown, those are the areas that are in totality, and that is where we're still recommending that you go on Monday. Speaking of Georgetown, that's where we're going to be. Don't forget our 1-hour special on Monday between 2 and 3 o'clock. Marla Branson and myself going to be broadcasting live from Georgetown, not only over the air, but Facebook Live. We're going to be live streaming on the website and the app, and we're actually going to live stream the entire eclipse, starting from 1:18 all the way through 4:09. So if you have to work, if you can't get away, you're still going to be able to see it. So I hope once again that I have perhaps at least convinced you a little bit to think considerably about heading south for the Great American Eclipse on Monday.